Welcome back, everyone. Another episode. Could it be possible? Could it be possible that this could be the continuation of the world's most ambitious, most amazing, most elaborate, expensive entertainment venture that has ever been produced on the face of the internet? Yes. Yes, it is. It is, in fact, podcast number 6, I believe. Yeah, podcast number 6. Now, the last episode, podcast number 5, was actually not really a podcast. It was like a special sort of episode. It was just a Binding of Isaac playthrough. It was episode 5, and then I had to divide it into episode 5.5. Because I was interrupted in between, then I had to do a second recording. But anyway, so I guess this is technically episode 5, but whatever. I'll just call it episode 6. I mean, who cares? Now, this is a special episode because I wanted to talk about a story. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read a story. It's a it's an incredible sort of classic short story. I think it's a short story. The one that I found is very short. It's not long at all. I wouldn't read like a long, story. I wouldn't want to do that, because once again, I want to keep the podcast short and whatever, and I don't want to sit here talking for like 4 fucking hours, you know what I mean? So the story that I'm going to read, I'm just going to start right away. The story that I'm going to read is called The Little Red Riding Hood. The Little Red Riding Hood. It's a classic, right? Well, now I know what you're thinking. Like, oh, well, I know this one. I know this story. It's whatever. It's not interesting, right? Well, I read the story when I was a kid, but it's just that like a kid, it's like a kid story, like a kid, sort of a kid version of it. Like, it's not the real actual story, from like back in the day or whatever. It's not the original story. It's usually like shortened for kids. It's a kid's book, so it's like 5 pages, and so I want to read the actual story, and I think I found it. Now, there may be, it might have been like a real book that's like really long, but I'm on a website called AmericanLiterature.com, so I'd imagine that the version that I found is pretty accurate. It might even be the original. It could have been short. And, yeah, I'm just gonna read it because I don't know, what the actual tale was, the actual story. So this is going to be interesting. So this is a special episode. It's a very special episode. So grab your cocoa, grab your blanket, and sit down and listen. Sit down and have a little listen. And I'm just going to grab some water. I'll put that there, actually. Now, on this website, I can start with, there's a picture of the Little Red Riding Hood, that's her name. I don't think you ever find out what her actual name is. Yeah. So in the picture, she's got, a blue dress on. She looks like she's, 10 years old or something, 8 to 10. No, not 8, maybe 10. She looks like 10 in the picture. And it's a drawing, it's probably a very old drawing. And what's weird about it is, she's got the little Red Riding Hood on her, right? And there's a wolf. I think it's a wolf or a dog. There's a wolf next to her, and it doesn't look intimidating at all. It almost looks like a dog. I'm actually starting to think it's a dog, so I don't want to even go into, because maybe the story actually says that she has a dog, so I don't want to start comparing, saying there's a wolf, because then I'll make a fool of myself. But she's actually standing next to like what appears to be to me a wolf, and it's sort of like curved around her. You know how a cat sometimes when it's like it sort of caresses your leg and it sort of curves around your leg or whatever, and it looks up at you. That's sort of what the dog is, or what the dog or wolf is doing, and it's got its tongue out. You know, like it's happy. So I don't know what that's about. And she's got a little basket. I guess that's the stuff that she's gonna give to the granny or whatever. All right. So that's there. There's a little picture there and whatever. So I'll start reading the story now. So it says here, the story is featured in favorite fairy tales and short stories for children. You may want to compare it to the Brothers Grimm version, Little Red Cap. Okay, so I don't know anything about it. Well, let's just ignore that. So it starts out like this. Once upon a time, there was a dear little girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her. Everyone? Really? Everyone liked her. There was not a single person that just sort of like, oh God, here she goes. Here she comes. Oh God, she's annoying. Oh, and she's got the Little Red Riding Hood on again. Does she ever wash it or wear anything else? God. You know? She was loved by everyone who looked at her, but most of all by her grandmother. I get that. That's perfectly reasonable. Grandmother loves her the most. And there was nothing that she would not have given to the child. Anything? What about a gun? What about drugs and alcohol? I mean, they could have. The story wants you to assume like, oh well, it's just legal stuff. Well, that's not where my mind goes. She could have. Let's just keep going. Once, she gave her a little cap of red velvet, which suited her so well that she would never wear anything else. So she was always called the Little Red Riding Hood. Now, to me, that's a little strange. Like, so she wore it often, but it's not like a special clothing or anything. It's not like you know, it's just normal clothes. It's just a normal piece of clothing. And I get that it's red, and that's probably why it sticks out when she walks around, but she mixes it with a blue dress, and she doesn't stand out that much. I don't think so. And how many other people are probably have little Red Riding Hoods? How many other people? Probably a lot, I'd imagine. So, I mean, and I sort of imagine that this story is taking place in like the 1800s. So I'd imagine that almost every woman or, girl or woman or lady or whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to call them, have little riding hoods of all sorts of colors, and red probably might be the most popular one because red is a very popular color. Red and blue, those are like the most sort of popular colors, I think. Red, blue, and maybe green. So, and just because she wears it often, why does it stand out so much to people that they have to start calling her the Little Red Riding Hood? If I was wearing a top hat back in the 1800s or the 1900s or whenever you people wore them, I don't know, probably for a long time, would you start calling me the top hat guy? The little black top hat guy? The little black top hat? Would you start calling me that? No, of course not. So why do they keep calling her the Little Red Riding Hood? And why little? Are they going to keep calling her the Little Red Riding Hood whenever she grows up? Are they going to start calling her the The Big Red Riding Hood? So, I mean, she probably resents being called it. She probably hates it. I would. Being defined by everyone, but she just likes to wear the Little Red Riding Hood. That's it. Now, I'm going to make it a point. I'm going to make it a point to call her the Little Red Riding Hood every single time that I'm going to say her name. The Little Red Riding Hood. And what kind of a nickname is that? It's far too long for a nickname, right? It's 4 words. No, it's 5, because you say the. You know, the story actually doesn't say the, but I think a lot of people probably remember it as the Little Red Riding Hood. So I'm going to say that, because that's what most people think of. You know, I mean, the Little Red Riding Hood. I mean, usually nicknames only have like two words, you know. Like Freddie is like short for like Frederick. Bob is short for Robert, I think. You know, how many people have nicknames that are 4 to 5 words long? Now, usually nicknames are given to you because they're shorter. They're shorter. That's sort of the point. You want to be able to call people out with a sort of shorter name. And also, I guess it's a bit sort of affectionate. No, not affectionate, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, you know what I mean. So let's continue the story. So she was always called Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother said to her, "Come, Little Red Riding Hood." "Come, Little Red Riding Hood, here's a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She is ill and weak, and they will do her good. Set out before it gets hot." So, wait. Before I continue the statement here, this quote, and this is the mother saying this. This is her basically setting up the whole story, right? But something that struck me, and you might have heard me when I saw it. "Come, Little Red Riding Hood, here's a piece of cake and a bottle of wine." So her mother calls her the Little Red Riding Hood. The mother calls her daughter the Little Red Riding Hood. She calls her by the nickname that the rest of the town has given her. Why? Now, normally parents call you by your name. You know, they don't call you by the nickname that your friends at school give you. They usually call you by your actual name, because that's just what parents do. I don't know why they do it, but they do. So, I guess, are they like really close? It's like one of those. So the Little Red Riding Hood's parent, her mother, right, is sort of her parenting method. Her parenting technique is like she doesn't see her daughter as a daughter. She sees her more like a friend. You know, she sees her more like a friend. It's one of those kind of relationships. Kind of explains why she trusts her with a bottle of wine as well. Now, I would imagine that if you gave a bottle of wine to your kid and say, "Hey, take this somewhere, go out on a long walk," do you really expect your kid not to pop that bottle of wine open and take at least one swig at it? Take at least one swig of wine? Or swug of wine? I don't know. Swig. I think it's a swig. You would take at least one. I probably would. So she has a lot of trust. She has a lot of trust in the Little Red Riding Hood. Her only daughter. Probably the only daughter she has. Take them to your grandmother. She is ill and weak, and they will do her good." Really, wine is going to do her good? Your grandmother, if she's sick now, I don't think you should drink wine and alcohol if you're really old. I mean, you can. It's not super dangerous, but it says she's ill and weak. You really want to give her wine? I mean, a piece of cake, that's fine. A piece of cake, that's a piece of cake. But a bottle of wine? A whole bottle. She's going to drink the whole bottle, is she? Right away? No, probably not. She'll drink a glass of wine, but she's ill and weak. Why would you drink wine when you're ill and weak? I don't drink alcohol if I'm sick. Most people probably don't, unless you're the Wolf of Wall Street, popping Quaaludes every day. Set out before it gets hot. And when you're going, so when is this taking place? Is this taking place when set out before it gets hot? So is it the morning, or I guess it's in the morning before the sun rises. Either that, no, it has to be, because you can't really say the same thing. Like if she said it at like lunchtime, like 12 o'clock, and you said like set out before it gets hot, that doesn't make any sense because the sun's going to go down, it's going to be cold. So yeah, this has to be taking place in the morning, like before sunrise. Okay. Set out before it gets hot, and when you're going, walk nicely and quietly, and do not run off the path, or you may fall and break the bottle. And then your grandmother will get nothing. Walk nicely and quietly, or you may fall and break the bottle. That's what you care about? That's why you don't want your daughter to run off the path in the middle of the woods? Because she might fall and break the bottle? You don't care about her well-being? You don't say like, oh, and remember, walk quietly and do not run off the path because there's wolves. There's wolves in the woods. Be careful. She doesn't warn her about the wolf, apparently. She doesn't warn her about the wolf. Now, wait a minute. Does the mother know about the wolf? Does the mother know about the wolf? She has to, right? The mother has to know about the wolf. All right, the wolf problem. Because think about it. She's a fully grown human being. She's a fully grown human mother, right? She's given birth. She has a husband that's probably a lumberjack. Let's be real. Now, I know there's a lumberjack involved in the story. Most people probably know. And we're not going to go there yet. But she probably has a husband, right? And if she does, I'm not saying that that's the reason that she has to know about the wolf. She knows it just because she lives in the woods, right? I mean, she must know. She probably grew up in the woods. She knows about the wolves. Her own parents probably warned her. She might have seen wolves. She knows about the wolf. She has to know. Now, why would you, if you know about the wolf problem, why would you send out your probably only daughter at sunrise to go on a walk in the woods alone? When you know there's a wolf out there, give her a knife, give her a flip knife or a gun, give her a musket. I mean, if she has to fire it, she's going to fall on her ass because of the recoil, but at the very least, she'll be alive. And usually wolves don't hunt alone. Actually, yeah, wolves don't hunt alone, so she would probably have to drink some water. Jesus Christ. Wolves usually hunt in packs, so even a musket wouldn't save her. I guess wolves can hunt alone. Can hunt alone, but I think it's probably not very often. Let's see, where was I? Set out before it gets hot. Walk nicely and quietly. Do not run off the path. You may fall and break the bottle, and then your grandmother will get nothing. And when you go into her room, don't forget to say, "Good morning," and don't peep into every corner before you do it. What? What? Why? And when you go into her room, don't forget to say, "Good morning," and don't peep into every corner before you do it. Is she telling her not to be nosy, or like she wants her to be like proper, sort of to be respectful to her grandmother? I guess that's fine, but it just comes off as weird. Like it's almost like she knows the wolf is going to be there waiting for her. Like she paid off the wolf to like get rid of her. To get rid of her only daughter because she's tired of taking care of her. Man. Alright, I'm going to take a sip here. "I will take great care," said the Little Red Riding Hood to her mother, and gave her hand on it. She gave her hand on it. I guess that's like an old term for, like an old way of saying, like, you know, swearing, like, I'll give you my word. So that's fine. I don't really have a problem with this sentence here. I'll give them that one. I'll give them that one. It's not the first time I've said that. "The grandmother lived out in the wood." What? It's not plural? Isn't it woods? It just says the grandmother lived out in the wood. Alright, well, let's just ignore that. That might be a spelling error. "The grandmother lived out in the wood, half a league from the village. And just as the Little Red Riding Hood entered the woods, a wolf met her." Huh? That's it? What? "A wolf met her. The Little Red Riding Hood did not know what a wicked creature he was, and was not at all afraid of him." This is not how I remember the story. So she actually met the wolf at, like, sort of the beginning of the journey, half a league from the village. And no, just as the Little Red Riding Hood entered the woods. So really, at the beginning of the journey, she met a wolf, and she's so innocent and sweet that she doesn't know that the wolf is like a bastard. You know, he's like an evil fuck. You know. Good. I'll do the voice of the wolf. "Good day, Little Red Riding Hood," said he. "Thank you kindly, wolf." That's the Little Red Riding Hood. "Thank you kindly, wolf." No, let's just do it. "Thank you kindly, wolf." That's better. Whither away so early, Little Red Riding Hood?" "To my grandmother's," says that's the Little Red Riding Hood saying that. She tells the wolf that she's going to go to the grandmother. "What have you got in your apron?" I guess that's the basket that she has in the picture. So in the story, she has it in her apron, but on the picture, she has it in a basket with like a blanket over it. So that's a sort of a, I guess the picture, I wonder if the picture is actually like an official picture, because then it's wrong. It's a poor rendition. "What have you got in your apron?" "Cake and wine. Yesterday was a baking day, so poor sick grandmother is to have something good to make her stronger." I don't know why I'm making her British, but whatever. It just came naturally. "Where does your grandmother live, the Little Red Riding Hood?" "A good quarter of a league farther on the wood. Her house stands under the 3 large oak trees. The nut trees are just below. You surely must know it. replied Little Red Riding Hood. So she could not possibly have given him a better explanation of where her grandmother's house is. Now that seems like a big mistake. That's a big mistake. The wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young creature! What a nice and plump mouthful! She will be better to eat than the old woman. I must act craftily, so as to catch both." So, that wolf. First of all, the wolf can talk, so it's like an anthropomorphic wolf. So is this a high fantasy universe, or is this supposed to take place in reality? I don't know, because what should the lesson of this story be? That you should not talk to wolves and tell them where your friends are, so they can be eaten. You would never be able to talk to a wolf. So if this happened in reality, she would never be in any trouble. Well, she would, because she would get eaten by the wolf as soon as she encountered him. So he walked for a short time by the side of the Little Red Riding Hood, and then he said, "See, Little Red Riding Hood, how pretty the flowers are about here. Why do you not look around? I believe, too, that you do not hear how sweetly the little birds are singing. You walk gravely along as if you were going to school, while everything else out here in the wood is merry." So he's sort of implying that if you go to school, she might not walk so happily because school's not fun. Now, when I walked to school every day for all my school years, basically, and it wasn't bad. Like, yeah, you're not looking forward to school, but at least the walk there is like you might be skipping, or especially when you're young, like grab a stick, grab some rocks, throw it at a few cars, take a stick and sort of swing it around, and you're probably still walking kind of merrily, even if you're walking to school. But I get his point. I get his point. All right, I just wanted to mention it. The Little Red Riding Hood raised her eyes, and when she saw the sunbeams dancing here and there through the trees and pretty flowers growing everywhere, she thought, "Suppose I take grandmother a fresh nosegay." A nosegay? A fresh nosegay? I guess that's a flower. I'll assume that's a flower, a nosegay. That would please her too. It is so early in the day that I shall still get there in good time. Yeah, okay, so it is early in the day. See? I fucking knew it. I figured it out. See? It is so early in the day that I shall still get there in good time. And so she ran from the path into the wood to look for flowers. And whenever she had picked one, she fancied that she saw a still prettier one farther on, and ran after it, and so got deeper and deeper into the woods. Oh boy, she's in trouble. She's in a lot of trouble here. Meanwhile, the wolf ran straight to the grandmother's house and knocked at the door. Wait, the wolf knocked on the door? So it really is an anthropomorphic wolf. Does it have opposable thumbs and it walks on 2 feet? It certainly doesn't in the picture. In the picture, it is the most ordinary looking wolf I've ever seen in my life. But in the story, it gives me this vibe that it's like an anthropomorphic wolf that walks on 2 feet and can talk, like a werewolf almost. So that's kind of, so it can talk and it can knock. This is like maybe the wolf was like. You could make a cool sort of backstory for the wolf, where he's like a prince or something, or a king, and he got cursed by a witch, and now he's a wolf, and he hasn't learned his lesson yet. Like the king was evil, he was like a bad king, and then he got turned into a wolf, and now he's wandering around, and he's fucking mad. He's pissed off, so he's taking out his anger of being turned into a wolf. He's taking out his anger on the Little Red Riding Hood. Who is there?
Little Red Riding Hood,
replied the wolf.
She is bringing cake and wine. Open the door. Lift the latch. Lift the latch,
called out the grandmother.
I am too weak. I cannot get up. And I'm ill and weak. Do you have the wine?
She didn't say that. She just said,
I am too weak. I cannot get up.
That's what she said. The wolf lifted the hatch. The door sprang open, and without saying a word, he went straight to the grandmother's bed and devoured her. Then he put on her clothes, dressed himself in her cap, and laid himself on the bed and drew the curtains. He devoured her. Now, I'll be completely transparent. I know how the story ends, right? Not because I've read this particular story beforehand, but because, I know about the lumberjack. You probably do as well. So, and what happens. So, the wolf devoured the grandmother whole. Now, I can't believe that I'm talking about this again, but remember the podcast number 4, I believe it was, where we talked about the old lady who ate a horse. You can't just swallow things whole like that. That's completely impossible. The wolf cannot swallow the grandmother whole. All right, that's completely impossible. But what am I going to say? The wolf is talking. It's an anthropomorphic wolf that can probably walk on 2 feet. And so what can I say? I'll just have to accept it. Yeah, okay. The wolf devoured her whole. All right, fine. And then he put on her clothes, so the wolf is capable of dressing himself. So I would imagine that it has opposable thumbs as well. Really, we can just imagine that this is a werewolf. That's the image that I have in my head, that it's just a werewolf, honestly, at this point. Dressed himself in her cap, laid himself in bed, and drew the curtains. The Little Red Riding Hood, however, had been running about picking flowers, and when she had gathered so many that she could carry no more, she remembered her grandmother and set out on the way to her. So her running out in the woods doesn't really... The only importance of that in the story was for the wolf to get to the grandmother first. Now, wolves are pretty fast. You could probably run... The wolf could probably have just run there really quickly and gotten there way beforehand, even if you didn't go into the woods. He can run on 4 legs, I'd imagine, even if he's a werewolf. I'll take another sip here. She called out, "Good morning," but received no answer. So she went to the bed and drew back the curtains. There lay her grandmother, with her cap pulled far over her face and looking very strange. She's in a lot of trouble here, and let's accept this fact. The grandmother, that's not the grandmother. That's the wolf. There lay her grandmother with her cap pulled far over her face and looking very strange. Ill and weak, perhaps? Now, if she's ill and weak, you probably wouldn't want to eat her. So eating bad food. "Oh, grandmother," she said. "What big..." This is the classic part. This is the part that everyone knows. "What big ears you have."
Is it better to hear with you, my child?"
was the reply. Now, if you see your grandmother, supposed grandmother, laying there on the bed, you would immediately notice that it's a wolf. Or some strange creature, and you would completely panic, and you would probably run away. I don't know if you've seen like one of those videos on YouTube where people record their cat's reaction to like a cucumber. They just jump up in the air and they just run off. I mean, they just they're just careening out of the fucking door. I think careening is the right. I think that's a word. I mean, they just run. I mean, they completely panic. And that's what you would do in real life if you saw that. I mean, you would open the door, you would see the grandmother and you'd be like, "Whoa, what is that? That's not grandma." And you would run the fuck out of there as fast as humanly possible. Possibly flailing your arms around, right? Flailing your arms around in wild abandon, like Kermit the Frog. You know? You wouldn't start being like, "What big ears you have?" Ask a bunch of questions. No, you would probably panic right away. Now I know that it says that the cap is pulled far over her face, but still, I mean, the wolf ears, I guess they're covered by the hat, but it's still like you still have a large snout. It's like you would probably see it. I mean, maybe he just fully covered himself. Like he just completely covered himself. You cannot see the fur or anything. He's completely covered. That would have to be the case. Otherwise, if that's not the case, then this little girl, the Little Red Riding Hood, is pretty fucking stupid, if you ask me. Or innocent, I guess. But honestly, I mean, let's be real. "Oh, grandmother," she said, "what big ears you have." Yeah. "But grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said.
"The better to see you with, my dear."
"But grandmother, what large hands you have." So the wolf has hands. So now it's official. The wolf actually has hands. And they're big. "But grandmother, what large hands you have."
"The better to hug you with."
"Oh, but grandmother, what a terrible big mouth you have."
"The better to eat you with."
And scarcely had the wolf said this, than with one bound he was out of bed and swallowed up the Little Red Riding Hood. When the wolf had appeased his appetite, he lay down again in the bed, fell asleep, and began to snore very loud. The huntsman was just passing the house and thought to himself, "How the old woman is snoring. I must see if she wants anything." Oh, God. All right, so he swallowed up the Little Red Riding Hood whole. Again, whole. So this wolf, in the picture, the wolf is actually like smaller than the Little Red Riding Hood, but in the story, the wolf has to be enormous. I mean, the wolf has to be gigantic almost. It has to be an abnormally large wolf to be able to fit both the grandmother and the Little Red Riding Hood, and to be able to swallow it whole. I lost myself in this text here. There we are. Now, it says here, it just goes, so the wolf fell asleep and began to snore very loud. And then it goes, "The huntsman was just passing the house." The huntsman? As if he was established before, like we knew about the character. Like, the huntsman. The huntsman was just passing the house and thought to himself. Or is that like, he's the huntsman for like a village or something? Like, he's the guy. Is that it? He like, this is the guy. This is like the sheriff, you know what I mean? Like it's a title. And why would he care about the old woman snoring? And then it says, "I must see if she wants anything." I mean, wouldn't it be better to say how the old woman is snoring? Like, so he thinks like that's strange. Wouldn't it be better to then say, Instead, to be, I must see if, like, something, if there's any trouble or something like that, at least. But no, he just wants to see if she wants anything, just because she's snoring. What an inquisitive man. I mean, what a sort of, this guy is really, like, he's very, how do you say it, curious, you know. So he went into the room, and when he came to the bed, he saw the wolf was lying in it. So he went into the room. Okay, let me read this. So he went into the room, and when he came to the bed, he saw the wolf was lying in it. "Do I find you here, you old sinner?" said he. "I have long sought you." So the huntsman, right? It's a huntsman, right? I didn't even register that. I just sort of read the huntsman as sort of in my mind as like the lumberjack, because that's that's the version that I heard as a kid. And he had an axe, but he's an actual huntsman. He's a hunter. So he's been looking for the wolf. They have like a history together. "You old sinner, do I find you here, you old sinner? I know about your deeds and what you have done. I have long sought you." That's just me. I invented that part. But he does really say, "Do I find you here, you old sinner? I have long sought you." He does say that. Then, just as he was going to fire at him, it occurred to him that the wolf might have devoured the grandmother and that she might still be saved, so he did not fire. Good decision. That's very smart. But took a pair of scissors and began to cut open the stomach of the sleeping wolf. So the wolf is still sleeping? The wolf didn't register at all what the huntsman said? I mean, the wolf spoke out loud. You would probably wake up from that, especially if you're a wolf. I mean, you have really good hearing. I guess he was really... He had like one of those, like... what do you call it? Like food comas? Like when you get really tired after eating. So he was like, he crashed, you know. But he took a pair of scissors. Now, in the story that I was read as a kid, it was a lumberjack that had an axe, and he cut open the wolf. Like, he slashed open the stomach of the wolf, which might be even worse. But he took a pair of scissors and began to cut open the stomach of the sleeping wolf, so he can cut open the stomach and the wolf is not even waking up. When he had made 2 snips, he saw the little Red Riding Hood shining, and then he made 2 snips more, and the little girl, the little Red Riding Hood, sprang out, crying, "Oh, how frightened I have been! How dark it was inside the wolf!" Really? That's your problem, that it was dark? She's more afraid of the dark than she is of being swallowed by a wolf. And after that, the aged grandmother came out alive also, but scarcely able to breathe. She almost died. I mean, she was in there for a long time. The little Red Riding Hood, however, quickly fetched great stones, with which they filled the wolf's belly, and when he awoke, he wanted to run away, but the stones were so heavy that he collapsed at once and fell dead. So he died from that. He didn't die from being cut open. They cut him open. And the fact that they're cutting the wolf open and filling him with rocks, just smash him in the head. Shoot him. It's a wolf. Why such an elaborate way to kill it? That's terrible. I mean, at least the wolf has the fucking balls to just do it. Like, he just ate him without saying a word. He just ate him. Straight up. But when they have to kill him, they just go through this elaborate fucking, filling him up with rocks so he can't run away, and what? That's so stupid. I mean, And then all three were delighted. In other words, the grandmother, the huntsman, and the Little Red Riding Hood. Just to clarify. The huntsman drew off the wolf's skin and went home with it. The grandmother ate the cake and drank the wine, which the Little Red Riding Hood had brought and revived. But the Little Red Riding Hood thought to herself, "As long as I live, I will never by myself leave the path to run into the wood when my mother has forbidden me to do so." That's a good lesson. Yeah, don't go off the path if your mother tells you not to. Now, the mother sort of was kind of weird about it, you know. She could have just been like, I mean, is this particular wolf like a rare wolf that can talk and stuff, or can every wolf do it in this world, in this universe? Because if so, then I would imagine that everyone in the village knows about it, and so the mother should have, the real warning should have been, remember, there are wolves about, and they can talk, and they're very, very convincing and sort of psychopathic and, you know, manipulative, and don't listen to it if it's talking to you, and just don't leave the path. Just follow the path, or you're gonna die, all right? You're gonna fucking die if you don't follow the path, my child. You know, I mean, that should have been the warning. You know, and but even that, if she stayed on a path, what would the wolf have done? Would the wolf have just given up, be like, screw this? But I mean, the wolf would probably just be like, screw it, and then just eat the Little Red Riding Hood right there, as soon as the wolf saw her. So it doesn't really. But anyway, yeah, it's a good lesson, I guess. Don't leave the path if your mother tells you not to, even though she's really vague about why not and whatever. She tells you, even though the reason why was because she was afraid you were going to break the bottle. Nothing more, right? It is also related that once. It's kind of like Old English a little bit in this text, so that's why I'm sort of stumbling on the text a little bit. Let me take another sip here. So that's why I'm sort of stumbling a little bit on the words, because it's using kind of old grammar a little bit. So that's why. It is also related that once, when the Little Red Riding Hood was again taking cakes to the old grandmother, another wolf spoke to her and tried to entice her from the path. So there are, in fact, many wolves. There are many wolves that can talk. All right, well, we've established that now, so that's a big problem. That's a big plot hole. That's, once again, another problem. The Little Red Riding Hood, however, was on her guard and went straight forward on her way, and told her grandmother that she had met the wolf, and that she had said good morning to her. But with such a wicked look in his eyes, that if they had not been on the public road, she was certain he would have eaten her up. So that's why the wolf can't just eat her on the path. It's a public road. But is it like high traffic? How much traffic is there on this road? And if the wolf can just eat people whole, just like swallow them up really quickly, does it even matter? If there's like a gap in the traffic of people walking, that's plenty enough for the wolf to just eat her. You know, it's on a public road. She was certain he would have eaten her up.
"Well,"
said the grandmother,
"we will shut the door, that he may not come in."
Soon afterwards, the wolf knocked and cried,
"Open the door, grandmother. I am the Little Red Riding Hood, and I'm bringing you some cakes."
It's sort of a different voice from the other wolf, but still evil, you know. Actually, I'll reread it.
Open the door, grandmother. I am the Little Red Riding Hood, and I'm bringing you some cakes.
Yeah. I'm sure you'd probably notice if the grandmother would sort of... The wolf makes no attempt at, like, masking his voice. It's just like... he doesn't even try. But they did not speak or open the door, so the greybeard stole twice or thrice round the house, and at last jumped off the roof, intending to wait until the Little Red Riding Hood went home in the evening, and then to steal after her and devour her in the darkness. But the grandmother saw what was in his thoughts. In front of the house was a great stone trough. So she said to the child, "Take the pail, the Little Red Riding Hood. I made some sausages yesterday, so carry the water in which I boiled them to the trough." The Little Red Riding Hood carried until the great trough was quite full. Then the smell of sausages reached the wolf, and he sniffed and peeped down, and at last stretched out his neck so far that he could no longer keep his footing, and began to slip, and slipped down from the roof straight into the trough, and was drowned. But the Little Red Riding Hood went joyously home, and no one ever did anything to harm her again. What a wonderful story, right? What a wonderful tale. So she went joyously home, and no one ever did anything to harm her again. That's great. Now, the story is being sort of read, we know now, from the ending, because the story says she was never harmed ever again. No one ever did anything to harm her again. Now, for anyone to know that, they need to have waited and sort of recorded her whole life so they can verify and say say that for sure. Like, they never harmed her again ever. And why would you know that? Like, was this a really great tale that started being spread throughout the village, and people talked about it, and then there was one guy who was like, I need to record this for the history books, and I want to know what happens to the Little Red Riding Hood and how her life goes after this. So I'm going to stalk her, and I'm going to stalk her every day until she's 100 years old, and then I'm gonna write a tale about her, not about her life, but just about this one thing that happened that I became completely obsessed with. And so that's the guy who's been telling the story, and he knows for sure that no one ever did anything to harm her again. Now, I mean, clearly there's sort of problems with this story, I think, and obviously I analyzed it that way, but it's a good tale, I understand why it's so famous and a classic. Now, on the next podcast, on the next episode, if you want to call it that, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Actually, I don't know. It could be anything, but I think that I want to do this again. I want to read another story, and I think it might be Hansel and Gretel. But I don't know if that's Lord. It has to be a short story like this one, where it's basically like just one page. Otherwise, it's going to take forever. I mean, how long did this take? Yeah, it took about an hour, almost. So now, for the movie segment part, I'll do the movie segment, sort of movie recommendation segment. It's going to be short, so I'll just do it. I'm not going to do it every episode, just when I feel like it. I don't want to have any like rules established or whatever. But the movie that I want to recommend this episode is, I want to recommend a movie from 1933. It's kind of like an old Hammer horror film. I don't know if it's from Hammer, but It's called The Invisible Man, and I think there's been at least three versions of it. The classic, the original, the classic, and then there are two more, I think, and probably some other stuff as well, maybe. But the movie is called The Invisible Man from 1933, specifically that version, and that version alone. It's about a guy it's about a scientist, a chemist, who, it's a black and white movie, and it's one of those really early horror movies, and it's really good. It's not scary because, it's scary by the standards of back then, where compared to now is like nothing. When you look at this movie, it's going to be almost like a comedy movie. You're going to laugh more than you're going to be scared. Which I actually like. I mean, that's one of the things I like about it. And it's about a scientist that invents a serum that he sort of has injected into himself over the course of a few months. You don't get to see that process, and he becomes permanently invisible, and he sort of tries to invent the antidote so he can go back to being normal. But the problem is that the serum that he's taking is sort of slowly making him go mad. It's making him go crazy, right? So he's struggling with finding the antidote, and he's very sort of antisocial, and he becomes almost like he hates people. So whenever he goes to, the movie sort of starts out with him going to what do you call it? Not a hotel, not a motel, but this is the old times, right? So it's like a bar, and there's lots of people sitting in there, and he comes in and people look at him, and he's got like bandage on his face, and he's got like a weird nose. He's got sunglasses on, like big glasses, so no one can see him. He's got a hat on and a trench coat, and he's got a briefcase. And people, he looks strange. Like this guy looks fucking weird. And he gets a room in this bar, and he just sort of pays for a room, and people go and sort of peep on him through the peephole and stuff, and he hates it because, first of all, he wants to be left alone, and second of all, because of the problem of him being sort of invisible and stuff, you don't want people to know about that. That's going to be a big problem if people find out. So he just calls him out, and and it escalates. People sort of think like, well, this guy is crazy, and he knocks like a lady over. She falls down the stairs in the bar, and that escalates things. So the police comes there, tries to arrest him, and then he just snowballs. There's like a snowball effect, and then he just sort of goes crazy. And then sort of the movie starts sort of from there, right? So that's the catalyst in the movie, and it just follows him, and it's got like really cool lines, and he kills people, and he just does a bunch of crazy shit, and there's like it's such a cool old movie. It's like a really cool line where he's gone mad with power, or like he's sort of a megalomaniac, and he sort of goes like, I want an army 100,000 strong, an invisible army. I want the world to grovel at my feet. He like does this speech, and then his I think his girlfriend or whatever, his lady, that really loves him and wants what's best for him, but he can't really listen to her because he's too sort of lost. But she tries to sort of help him. She's like, "Oh, please get better, please get better," like that. I spoke Swedish there for a second. But yeah, so that's the movie. I recommend it. It's really good. It's black and white, but it's not a silent movie. It's really cool, and I really recommend it. So that'll conclude the podcast number 6. This is the 29th of May, 2021. Thank you so much for listening, and We'll see what happens next episode. Might be Hansel and Gretel. Maybe. I'll see you. Have a good time. Bye.